Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, MSP Owner's Guide to Increasing Recurring Revenue Sales. I'm Sarah Duffy, the Marketing Manager here at Intronis, and I'm happy to be moderating today's session. Before we get started, I'd like to do some brief housekeeping. During the webinar, if you have any questions, feel free to share them using the questions or chat panel to the right of your GoToWebinar screen. At the conclusion of the webinar, you will be prompted to complete a brief survey. Please take a moment to tell us what you think as we are continuously improving the quality and content of our online events. Now, without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to today's presenter. Take it away, Gary.
Hey, thank you very much, Sarah. I appreciate it. I'm really happy to be here today and talking about something near and dear to my heart, which is something I've devoted 20 years of my life to, which is increasing monthly recurring revenue for IT providers. So I did this for 12 years in my first MSP right here in the Philadelphia area and made a lot of mistakes that I'm going to share and figured out some things that got us from 0 to 7,000 endpoints under management. Eventually, my company was acquired by Mindshift Technologies, and then after that, Best Buy. So in 2009, I started True Methods to help MSPs grow not just sales but also grow profitability. And one more note: I invested in another MSP about 5 years ago, and I'll talk about kind of where we are. I don't work in that business. We have a young owner who runs and works day to day in that business. So, from all counts, this is pretty much how I spend all my time is working on all aspects of profitably growing IT providers. So today, what we're going to talk about, this owner's guide is really about the math and science of top MSP performers. Like, what are some of the things that you can do even before you start to increase your chances of success? We're going to cover a lot today, Sarah. So if people feel they need a little bit more help, because we're going to move fast, they can send an email here to gary.promo@truemethods.com and with the subject line promo, and I'll have someone from my team spend 15 minutes with them and ask them like 6 questions about their sales process and give them some pointers in the right direction. So it's absolutely free. You don't have to put a credit card in or anything. We're just trying to help some people out. So here, let me start with describing my MSP sales journey. It started out as complete failure. I went on and I had an a sales career before I bought my MSP, and it was so different selling managed services than all the other products that I had success in selling. And at first, I couldn't figure out why. I was going out and explaining things. I thought it was good. People seemed interested, but I wasn't closing deals. So we made a few tweaks and changes and applied some elbow grease and discipline and went from complete failure to total mediocrity. And we got stuck there for a couple more years. Then I figured out some of the things I'm going to share today, and we got to started having more success and eventually repeatable success, where I trained not just myself but other people in my business on the process. And once that happened, that's when we quickly scaled the company and did it profitably and commanded a higher price. When I do live events, I always ask this question. Number one, is selling new MRR, monthly recurring revenue, one of your top goals? If there's 150 people in the room, 150 hands go up that is one of their top goals. Then I say, well, how many people are doing it? And I qualify it by saying that you're, um, adding at least on average maybe one good customer that's worth between 2 and 3 thousand a month every month consistently, and almost no hands go up. Well, some hands go up, and I say that aren't working with True Methods, and very few hands go up. How many businesses do you know, like industries, where everyone can agree on their top goal and no one can do it? So, what we want to do in the next hour is raise people's expectations about what's possible and get down to some real meat of things that people can apply. So, if you think about the math and science, and I try to apply math to everything that I do, um, to make sure that I can track my results. Top MSPs, they're more efficient. In other words, they don't expend as much money, time, or energy to get recurring revenue as average MSPs. And there is math and science that impact results that will allow you to make your goals more achievable, or if you don't understand it, almost guarantee that you will not reach your goals before you even start and you'll never know it. So I want to cover three important definitions that we're going to use to start things off here. The first one is called an FTA, and this stands for first time appointments. So this means when you engage a prospect and you get in front of them for the first time or the first time in a while, maybe it's someone you met a year ago and now you're back in front of them. So someone who you're at the beginning of the process to investigate whether they might be a fit for you. So that would be a first time appointment. Your close ratio is the ratio between the number of first time appointments you go on in a period and the number of new agreements or sales that you have. And then the third thing is average MRR. This is the average monthly revenue per client. So on average, do they pay you 1,000 a month, 2,000 a month, 3,000 a month? And that's also a really important number because this is the recurring revenue sales formula. Um, when you set a goal for monthly recurring revenue, it equals the number of first time appointments you attend times your close ratio times your average MRR. So the example would be if you set a goal of $36,000 for the year of new monthly recurring revenue that you want to sell, and you go on 75 first time appointments over the course of the year, and you have a 20% close ratio, and each of those is worth about $2,500, you would, it's a little bit more than 36,000, so you achieve your goal. So what I want to do is I want to look at the impact of close ratio and average MRR and what role they play in making your plan achievable or not achievable. So the first thing we'll look at is average MRR. This is your average deal size. So if your average customer spends $1,500 a month to achieve a goal of $36,000, you would need to add 2 clients a month, 24 clients over the course of the year. If your close ratio is 20%, you would need to go on 120 first time appointments. If your average is 2,500, you would need just 15 clients. At that same 20% close ratio, you would need to go on 75 first time appointments over the course of the year. And finally, at 3,500 a month, you'd need just 11, less than one a month, with that same close ratio and only 55. And most people are much more likely to be able to find 55 good prospects than they are 120 over the course of the year. So focusing, we're going to talk about what drives this, but obviously focusing on this is one thing that I did with both of my MSPs. When I got to my new MSP, their average deal size was under 2,000. And now, 5 years later, our average client spends almost $4,000 a month. So we'll talk about what we did. And as we've done that, we've also been able to achieve our sales goals because we can be more focused and really focus on the clients that have the right value. Okay. Okay, so the next thing I want to do, let me see if I got the right slide here. I do. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is the impact of close ratio. And this is and we're going to talk we're going to dive deeper into the type of leads you're looking for and what are the things that affect close ratio. But if you have to generate so many FTAs, like 150, like the top person here, and you have a 10% close ratio, right, to get those 15 clients, even with a $2,500 average MRR, you need a lot of first time appointments. You need twice as many, obviously, as someone with a 20% close ratio. So if you combine these things, and this is normally how I see it in the real world, the lower your average contract value, usually the lower of value you have to your clients and lower your close ratio. So someone with a 10% close ratio and a $1,500 average, they're never going to get there. You're not going to generate those 240 leads, as opposed to the other end of the spectrum of someone whose average deal size is 3,500 with a 20% close ratio, they only need 55. So most people fall somewhere in between these, the 55 and the 240, The lower amount of FTAs that you can have to achieve your goal by doing things that impact close ratio and impact average MRR is the shortest distance between you and what you want out of life. We haven't even got to profitability yet, but we'll talk about that as well. Okay, so now let's look at these two factors that impact sales math, average MRR and close ratio. And what are the things that determine those? Well, the first thing that determines your average MRR first is your value proposition. So if you can command a higher price, let's say $150 on average per seat instead of 100, that's going to have a major impact. Even if you sold the same size clients, your average MRR will be higher because of your value proposition. Okay. Um, Minimum MRR. So everyone should set, rather than saying we only deal with clients that have at least this many workstations or other categories. Instead, just say, look, we don't, we'll do business with anyone, but they have to be, if they fit our, our generics in terms of where they're located and their technology stack and their industry. But if you can't spend X amount, 1,500 a month, 2,000 a month, if you can't spend that minimum, then we don't consider you, a great prospect for us. So if you're smaller today, you may have to start with a lower minimum. And then over time, as you build value, you can raise that minimum. So we see many people that are small. Maybe they start with a minimum of 1,000, then they get to 1,500, then eventually 2,000. In my MSP, we don't like to take any contracts that are under 3,000 a month. We will take them down to 2,500, but usually it's because we think the company is going to be a good long-term customer. They really fit, our mold, or they're in an industry that we're trying to build and they could be a good referral partner for us. And then target the right prospects. So look for those companies that fit that mold so that you can be more efficient. Then on the close ratio side, what impacts close ratio? Value proposition. If you can separate your services from others and they see a clear difference, you're going to be able to close a higher percentage of those deals. The second thing is lead quality. Not all leads are created equally, and we're going to talk about from a high level what the different types of leads are and how you target to be able to increase close ratio. Then the last thing is sales process. You have to have a defined sales process. And the best way to describe this is that if you were to hire a salesperson to only sell monthly recurring revenue today, in the first couple weeks, would you be able to describe exactly what they need to do throughout the sales process? When they get in front of a customer, what's the first thing they do? The second thing, how would you know whether they did a good job? And if you can answer yes to that, you probably have the beginnings of a sales process. If your training program would be just shadow me and listen to what I do and try to do it, then you don't have a sales process today. And that's going to lower your close ratio. So let's take a look at this and look at we talked about the impact that value has on price. So here's two MSPs that both have 50 clients that average 20 seats. The one in green on the top, um, they have higher value and they command the price of $140 on average per seat. And today, um, MSPs that we see, top MSPs are between 140 and 165,000. Some are higher if they're in a vertical or they're heavily have a lot of cloud components, but that's pretty much where top people command their price. So those 50 clients would generate 140,000 a month of recurring revenue. On the bottom, there's someone who only commands a price of 95,000. So the first thing is you see their average MRR is lower, so that makes their sales goals tougher. But the other thing is, look, they're both managing 1,000 seats, but one's generating $45,000 more per month. So think about the impact on profitability that this has on companies. And this really tells the story of what I see. And today at True Methods, between our coaching and our software, we work with about 1,000 MSPs around the world. And we see in every marketplace, we see both of these companies. So obviously value proposition is super, super important. And here's kind of the thought process on it. What's the value of your MSP offering? And today, what it is, if you take all of your monthly recurring revenue, divide it by all of the seats you support, that would be your average on seat price. That's the value today that your customers see. So, how do you raise that value? And can you separate your offering from others? So, here's a little email or conversation that I had, and I probably have been on in my first MSP. I probably was on over 1,200 sales calls during the 12 years or more that I owned the MSP. And I had this conversation a lot. Hey, Gary, your price is $1,000 a month more than the other two vendors. What gives? Love a skeptical prospect. And this happened a lot. We'd go in and we'd give a quote of, 4,000 a month, and they'd be looking at three vendors, and the other two were at $3,000 a month. And so here's how the conversation would go, and then explain to you how you get there. So what I would say to them is, well, do you think that, we talked about two or three things that are an issue in your business from your technology. A couple of them you felt were really important. Like you told me they were impacting your business. Do you think that all three of us can solve those issues? Are you 100% confident that all three of us can get there? Because if you are, you shouldn't spend $1,000 a month more. In fact, you probably shouldn't spend a dollar more. And then this particular case, the one that I'm thinking of, he said, well, no, we do think you're better, but $1,000 is a lot of money. So I said, well, what if the difference was only $500? Would we be having the same conversation? And he said, well, probably not. So right there, I cut the delta in half. So then I said, okay, so you're concerned about spending $500 more than you'd like to. Do you remember we talked about our process and what we do and how we impact those things? That's the reason we charge a little more. Do you remember those conversations? Said yes. Well, then let me go back to say, if you knew the only choice you had was to spend $500 more than you wanted to, or not guarantee that you would solve those issues, if that was your only two choices, what would you do? And he said, well, obviously, I would spend the extra money. And so at that point, all I had to do was go back and tie our unique process, some of the value that I'm going to explain to you now, back to it, and we closed a nice percentage of those deals. So that was kind of the logic. So I wanted to start off with that and then take you through this concept of value based pricing. And what most MSPs have is what I call technology based pricing. They're building their value on features, tools, and support. And today, in a maturing market, they're the same features, the same tools, and the same support that everyone else has or says they have, as opposed to value-based pricing. And value-based pricing is built on the business impact that you can uniquely make on your clients, different that you can show them is different than what other people do. And that's how you command a higher price, and that's how you increase your close ratio. So it's like there's a concept we use called reframing. It's the ability to reframe clients by showing them the impact of what you do on big cost in their business. I love to use this to explain it. It comes from the book Predictably Irrational. And if you look at this, these two green dots are the same size, but the one on the left looks larger because it's surrounded by relatively smaller blue dots. That's your service offering. That's your monthly fee. So if you surround it by smaller blue dots, like my example, where I was 4,000 a month and the competitors were 3,000 a month, at first glance, my dot looked huge. But then what I did is I started to surround it with larger blue dots. And if you think about one of our customers, someone who's spending, who has 30 users and is spending $4,000 or $4,500 a month with us, that same customer probably has, three or $400,000 in payroll, taxes, overhead. So compared to all their expenses, whether they spend 3,000 with us or 4,000, we're a relatively small percentage cost to them. And if we can show them how that investment can impact making their people more productive, lowering their risk, solving things that impact those big costs, if we can make it even without an ROI calculator, if we can just logically show them that we have an approach and a process that's different that can impact those things, it can quickly eliminate price as an objection. I like to use this analogy between a grocery store or a bakery. If you think about a grocery store, every grocery store has basically the same canned items when you walk down that aisle. And you may like one grocery store over another, but you're not going to spend 60 cents for a 33-cent can of beans. For this reason, grocery stores are a high volume, very low margin, commodity driven business. Now, if you think about a bakery, they also use all the same ingredients. Every baker starts with the same basic ingredients, but they combine them into their own unique recipe. And because of that, most people, I know that I drive past two or three other bakeries to get to the chocolate cake that my wife wants when we have a party. In fact, that'll happen this week. I have a daughter who's graduating from high school, and for the party, there's a specific cake she wants, and I'll drive past two or three other bakeries, and when I get there, I don't really care whether it costs $35 or $30 for that cake. That's the cake. That's the recipe that we want, although it's made from the same ingredients that all those other bakers use. So the question is, are you an MSP or are you a reseller? So are you just selling or bundling the same stuff that every single person has? And that's what people are comparing you against, or are you combining them, what I would call your superpower, into your process and your recipe in a way that a prospect can simply and easily see the difference? In other words, is someone be willing to drive past two or three other MSPs to get to yours and pay a little bit more? So when you think about your support offering, it's focusing on that end result of combining your people and process and technology and creating a true competitive advantage. I call that your superpower. If you're going to do that, you're going to limit your choices and offering. I see people, they have bronze, silver, gold, pewter, tin. They have all of these different offerings. And I ask them, you can have it with or without virus, with or without backup. Well, I said, well, what is the right one? What's the one that if they're paying you the right amount and you have the right resources to use your process that can impact their business results in a predictable way? And they say, this one. Well, why do you have all the rest? And they usually say, because that's what, people want choices and that's what they'll buy. But many times the people that I'm asking the question, they're not selling a lot of recurring revenue. So my thing is, um, why don't we decide what someone needs and explain it to them in the right way? They can't get our results their way. And if we have a result that we want to deliver, there isn't 20 different ways to deliver that result. So the joke that I tell is at my MSP, we have one offering, but you can have it in any color you want as long as it's black. So, so obviously one of the keys to this is the bundling of services. You want to figure out, and we teach a process in my training program. We call it microeconomics to take all the services and all of the technology and tools you want to bundle and a way of determining what your average cost per seat is so that you can target the gross margins you should be looking for, which should be between 70 and 75% gross margins. And so there's a process we go through. But that key is to bundle those services so that you can show them like that bundle has a result. And what binds it together, that is makes it your chocolate cake. So, I mean, one great example of this is Intronus. So, being able to take your backup disaster recovery and make that part of your bundle, that's a great example of something that you want to work towards if you're not doing that today, because we don't really want to sell them backup. We want to sell them what comes from. Really, what they want is they want to know that if they have an issue, that they can recover from it. They want that end result. So if you're not using Intronus today, you can get a quote. Go to intronus.com/, no limits, and you can get a quote today on that. So that's a great place to start. So think about it this way from a higher level. Look at your product offering that you have and ask yourself, How much of what you're selling in your monthly fee is what I would call it's, and this is all important stuff, but it's everybody's stuff. Patch, spy, spam, virus backup, help desk, cloud services, they're all critical. I mean, they're table stakes. You have to be able to do them and you have to be able to do them right. But everybody expects that you do, right? So all MSPs, if they're not, they should be doing all those things. And how much of what you're showing is unique to you? Your best practices, your standardization, your technology alignment and business process, your business strategy, those things that really are the process or the recipe, the superpower that you wrap around that. Because if really what you're selling, giving people choices on, is the things on the left hand side, I'm going to guess that you're feeling competition. Your prices aren't as high as you'd like them to be, your margins aren't as high as you like, and your sales model continues to be a struggle. As you can move more over to the right, all of those things start to fall away. You start deciding the customers that you want. You get a higher close ratio. Price is no longer the main objection. Whether they're going to spend, 3,000 or 2,500 isn't as important to those prospects as you start to show them how your offering is going to impact those business results. It really changes everything. And when I talk about that, my experience in the industry, here was a major change when we went from total mediocrity to success. I mean, we had got to the point where we were bringing on, you know, two, three, four customers a month using the same sales process. I was the same person with the same sales experience that I had 2 years before when we had almost very little, a fraction of that success. So here's what changed. I was in there trying to tell them every day when I went out in front of people about how great we were, how great our people were, how much experience we have, how great our tools were, all of those things. When I started changing that and saying, listen, let's talk about some of the issues you're having and the impact they have on your business, which is their results. Then I talked about what it would look like, what my customers have when they don't deal with any of those things, and ask them a simple question. What would your business look like? Would it be a benefit to you if you didn't deal with those things? If they were to go away? This is before I tell them anything about what we do or how we do it. Would that be of value to you? And if it wasn't, and they didn't need better results, and they can live with what they have now, we moved on quickly. We got out of there. But if they said, yeah, I don't want to have these issues, give you an example. They might say, look, we have a vendor today and our line of business app server, it reboots itself during the day every 2 to 3 weeks, and they can't figure out why this happens. So, okay, so what if you were assured that those kind of things and others would never happen? Would that be of value to you? Is it enough of a reason to make a change? Would you invest a few dollars more? So, first we get them to determine what the value of different results are. And then, as a second step, we show them our process or our superpower and explain to them that their issue is not the issue, it's a result of the issue, and that other vendors who are going to come in with the same approach and the same price, no matter what they say, the only thing will be different is their intentions. And when I started breaking it up into these two steps, first results, then our unique approach, and I had both of those, everything started to change. So I get a call from one of my Formula One, that's our training program, one of our True Methods Formula One members, and says, listen, I just sold a client at 3,000 a month when a year ago I was out there and I pitched them at 1,800 and they said no. I said, well, what changed? He said, I did. A year ago, I was out there just trying to tell them all the great technology and how great we are. This time, I spent the time talking about their business and where they needed to be and explained to them how we would solve those issues and the way in which and why the investment was a big part of how we were going to do that. And they signed the agreement on the spot for 3,000 a month. And he said, I got out to my car and it's like the sky opened up and I said, it's easier to sell the right program at the right price than it is to sell the wrong program at the wrong price. And I said, well, I've been telling you that on our webinars twice a month for a year. And he said, well, I know, but I didn't believe you. Now, had this um, client of mine been out in front of this prospect And the minute they push back on the price, if he would have said to him, "Well, if you don't want to spend 3,000, you know what? I can just sell you for 1,800 in my crappy silver program." He wouldn't have got the 3,000, and he probably wouldn't have got a signed agreement that day. And he would have thought how, wow, sales is really hard, and he would have thought a bunch of other reasons. But because he approached it in this manner, he was able to get the right customer at the right price. So let's get down to some of the brass tacks here. First thing you got to do if you want to sell more recurring revenue is you have to set an MRR, an annual monthly recurring revenue goal. In our example, we used $30,000 to $36,000 as a basic goal. And then use the ratios, use close ratio and average MRR to determine the number of first time appointments. So that's the starting point. Based on your assumptions, you have to set a goal for how many prospects each month and each week that you need to be in front of. And that's what you're going to work towards is achieving that. Then focus on building your value proposition or your superpower so that you can make your close ratio higher, make your average MRR higher so that you can become more efficient. The way to do that is to build a warm lead generation engine, and I'll talk about that. So here's something we use in our training program. It's a sales goal calculator. You put in your annual goal, in this case 30,000 a month. Then you put in your average contract value. I use 2,500 a month and a close ratio of 20%. So, and I would say if you're in the recurring revenue business, you shouldn't set a goal for a year much less than 30,000. That's achievable for everyone who has focus on the right things. Over a 6 month period, everyone can ramp up to that. I've seen it over and over again. So in this case, to get to 30,000 with that average MRR and close ratio, you need about one customer a month, 12 over the course of the year. Then with that, that means that based on that close ratio, you need about 60 first time appointments for the year, about 5 a month. So a little more than one a week. And that seems like an achievable goal. Anyone can get there, all right, to be able to get to the point where you get in front of roughly one new prospect every month. But here's the key to getting there: understanding that not all leads are created equally, and understanding the difference between a warm lead and a cold lead and where you want to spend your time. So, cold leads are ones that may not have any established need. Maybe they hit your website, and the way your website's designed, there's a bunch of reasons why they might raise their hand. Not all of them are that they're looking for a relationship with somebody to buy at the right price or solve certain problems. Warm leads are people that have a need. This would be like a referral. So someone gets referred to you, you know at least they're looking to make some change or they have some need. And then the highest close ratio you can get are what I call returning prospects. These are people that you've already met with. You didn't sell them at the time, the timing wasn't right, or maybe you didn't have your value proposition at the time. But the next time they're willing to take a meeting with you and they engage and they know something about you, you're going to close a high percentage of those. So if you think about it this way, you want to think about have your prospect database as at the top are suspects. These are people that we've not even confirmed whether they would be a perfect prospect for us. Then there's prospects we know generically they fit. They're in our geography. They're the kind of companies in the industries that we like. They're about the right size, their technology stack. And then below that is our warm 250. This is a few hundred companies that we know a lot about, not just the generic stuff, but we've spoke to them. We've met with many of them, and we know they're a perfect fit for us. We just weren't able to get them to see it our way yet. But these are people we feel like at some point we can do business with. And at the bottom is our hot prospects. They're the ones that we're currently engaged with, and they're going to make a go or no go decision in the next 30 days. What I see when I meet people that don't sell a lot is they hopefully have one or two people at the bottom that got referred in, and then they have a bunch of people at top that are suspects, but they have nothing in the center. And if you want to build a consistent flow of new customers at the right price, you have to focus on activities that build the middle down to the bottom of this funnel with discipline over time. And once you do, amazing things will happen. So, lead generation sources. When I got to my MSP, the new one, they didn't have great sales results. So the first thing I did was I got our young owner focused on these three things. One, what we call COIs. We teach this process in our training program. Centers of influence. How to find people in your marketplace that have the same target market as you do, deal with the same basic size customers, and they deal with the same decision maker that we want to get in front of. And for many times for us, we're dealing with like for at my MSP, we want companies between, 20 to 80 users is our sweet spot. Although now that we've gotten larger and scaled, we can deal with customers between 80 and 250. But so we're looking for people that have that same target market and they deal with the same person that we would. And so what I said at my MSP was I wanted our owner to be in front of one potential new center of influence every single week. Because you have to get through a lot of them to find one or two you can develop a close relationship with. And one way to find those is to talk to your clients, your best clients, the ones you want more of, and ask them, hey, who else do you deal with that you love as much as us? And then say, because there's a good chance that if they love that customer that they have, that vendor would also have more people like that, and ask them if they would make an introduction. The next thing is referral programs. Most people in this industry live off referrals. The problem is they don't get enough of them, and the referrals might not be your target market. Hey, I have a friend of mine who said, they need help with IT, and you find out they have 5 users and they can't meet your minimum. So the way we solved this was we teach a process around LinkedIn. So the owner and now the salesperson that we have at our MSP, they can talk with our customers, find out if they'd be comfortable referring us, and then be able to say to them, hey, I was looking through some of your LinkedIn contacts and I saw like these 10 companies that we would like to get an introduction. Do you know any of them? And they'll say, well, I know these two. Great. Tell you what, I'll send you an email that you can just cut and paste to send to make. If you could just make the introduction, I'd appreciate it. And they're happy to help. So people want to help us. They can't think about the whole big world of people that they know to come up with a name. But if we help and guide them, so this has made a major impact, probably doubled or tripled the amount of quality referrals over time that we get today compared to when we started. So these kind of targeted warm lead generation sources are going to get you people that have a higher close ratio and are more likely to close sooner. The other thing that we teach and have added, I call inside sales, and we actually have a community of about 100 inside salespeople that work for MSPs of our members that we have a call with once a month, and they have a relationship and they have a chat that we have on our portal that they use. But here's what inside sales is. It's not just telemarketing. This combines two critical functions. One is lead generation. They generate, 3 or 4 good appointments a week. But it's also sales database management. So they're not just trying to get leads. They are talking with suspects, figuring out who's a prospect, talking to prospects, figuring out who would be a really great fit for Warm 250. So every day they're making and building the center of your database. So again, when I got to my new MSP, we hired an inside salesperson. We mainly focused and made our plan off closing the warm leads the first year because our list was cold and needed work. But over time, this warmed up, and now we have great information about a lot of people in our marketplace. So the amount of leads and the quality of leads we get today, as we made this investment, has been huge in kind of supercharging our sales efforts. So here's another story. I love this one. Um, I get it talking to one of my members. He said he just sells a customer at 2,200 a month when the competitor said they could do the same thing for 1,500. So he goes and gets a referral, and he goes and meets with the decision maker. And at the end of it, the guy says, "That sounds awesome. Come back on Friday when my partner is here, and we'll sign the agreement. Bring the agreement." So he shows up on Friday, And his contact comes out and he says, "Hey man, we got a problem. My partner also got a referral and met with them, and they said they could do basically the same thing for 1,500 bucks." So my member said, "Well, what are you going to do?" He said, "Well, I still think you're better. So I want you to come in and meet my partner. Tell us again all the great things that you do. We're going to think about it for the weekend and let you know on Monday." And he said to me, he's like, "Gary, I thought about it." And I said, "I don't think that Gary would like me to do it that way." So he says to the guy, "Well, maybe you don't have to wait until Monday." He's like, "What's the issue? Is it that you don't think you need $2,200 support? You only need $1,500 support? Because if that's the case, why don't you just buy the $1,500 support from the other guy and just enjoy your weekend? Or do you think you can get $2,200 support for 1,500 bucks? Which is it?" And he said the prospect just stared at him for like 20 seconds and then said, "I don't know which." So he went back and he sat down with him and his partner and he explained to him his superpower, his unique process, why people invested a little bit more with him, what the issues they were concerned about that were going to impact their business, and how we tied him back to his prospect. And 45 minutes later, he walked out with a signed agreement for $2,200. So I said to him, "What'd you do in that 45 minutes that you didn't do in the first hour you spent when you were there earlier?" He's like, "It was referral. I just figured they were warm, and all I did was just go in and I just told them all the great things we do." So understanding that difference of talking about results first and then tying it back to your unique process second is what creates your ability to separate yourself and command this higher price. And it really is the story of our industry. Why right now today there's more recurring revenue being sold at a higher price than ever before by the top people, while the average providers are still in the same place that they were, which is they're struggling with sales, they're struggling with commanding the right price, and the concepts we talked about today and creating that superpower, which is something we really work with on when we get someone new that comes to True Methods, is really the key and can save people years of their life. You want to be in this story the person that can go in there in that 45 minutes and explain to them what the difference is between their offering and the thing that someone else told them was the same thing. MSP efficiency. Average MSPs are spending too much time and energy to get mediocre results. Um, Not just in sales. I see people, they're just running around marketing, sales, all this energy. But in terms of getting the right customers at the right price, they're getting very little results. And the same thing, they have 5 employees, 10 employees, 20 employees. They have all of this payroll, all of this risk. Everyone's doing tickets, everybody's busy every single day. And when they get to the end of the month after a true owner's salary, they're showing a profit of 5, 10, 12, 14%. So it's all of this risk and effort. And so when you think about this efficiency, they're creating such a long road to success that over time it wears them down. If you can focus on value proposition, you can dramatically impact your results. That's the key to this. So here's what I mean. Let's say that I told you, look, I'm going to give you a managed service provider. All right. I have two you can choose from. One of them has $3,000 or $3 million a year in revenue, and the other one has $1.2 million a year in revenue. Which one would you like me to give you? Now, if this is all the information that you had, you would take the $3 million revenue business. Everyone would. It's a bigger business. But now I give you the rest of the story. The $3 million business is a 10% true net profit after owner salary. So it generates $300,000 a year of profit. The $1.2 million business is at 25% net profit. It also makes 300. Now, which one would you rather have? And I would pick the $1.2 million business, still make the same owner salary, the same $300 of profit, and be home for dinner. And by the way, if I could figure out how to get this business to 3 million, okay, um, at that point, I have a business that makes almost, approaching $1 million a year, right, with that kind of efficiencies. And that's what this is about. When I ran my first MSP, and we finally scaled, we ran at 33% net profit. So I meet people like this every day that have been in business for 15, 20 years, have defied the odds to build a $3 to $5 million business. But based on their profitability, I have True Methods members that have half of their revenue or less and make as much or more money. And so you want to start with this concept in your business. Before you put a sales plan together, you want a sales plan, you want a service delivery plan, you want packaging and pricing, that everything you do is geared towards your efficiency. Otherwise, you can get stuck in that, what I call that quagmire of mediocrity for years. I meet people that have been in the business for 10 years and they have a good business. It's not that they're failing. They have a good business, they make a decent living, but they never get over that hump to really have the business generate for themselves and for their team members what's possible in order to obtain a level of financial independence for themselves and financial security for their team. It just doesn't happen at 10%. And so when you think about a sales plan, your sales plan has to support that efficiency. Your service delivery and how you design each service delivery role, how you package and price those, all of these things have to support this efficiency. So I want to go now back to the slide that I used earlier and really think about this and think about where you are today in your business, right? Of one MSP that commands a price of $140 a seat and generates the 140,000 a month to manage 1,000 seats, while the other MSP only generates 95,000 a month for those same 1,000 seats. And guess what? Here's the worst part of the story. The one that only generates 95,000, they have more reactive tickets and alerts. They actually have more noise and cost because they don't have the extra money. Every dollar they get is going into solving tickets, alerts, and doing projects, as opposed to the person who has the commands the higher price, where they have the time and money to have resources to actually make those business relationships. So customers make more of an investment. They can spend more time on technology standards and alignment that drive down ticket noise and increase the value to customers. It brings up their productivity, it drives down their risk, and they're willing to look at price differently. So to me, this slide really says as much about where you are, comparing yourself to where you are, and making some plans on where you want to be in a year or 2 years from now. So, here's what I mean by MSP efficiency. At any revenue level, you want the fewest amount of clients, the fewest amount of endpoints, you want the fewest amount of reactive tickets, and the fewest amount of employees at any given revenue level. That's what's best for you. That's what's best for your customers. And also, it's what's best for your employees. If every time you add revenue, and think of it this way, we have a little thing you can check. We call it leverage. Take your annual service revenue, whether it's recurring revenue or non recurring revenue, all services, just don't count your products or cloud things that you resell, just service revenue, and divide that by the total number of employees in the business, everyone that you pay, including yourself, and see what that number is. The average MSP generates around $100,000 of service revenue per employee. So if they have 10 employees, they generate about $1 million a year of total service revenue. Top MSPs generate 150,000 or more. So the same 10 employees, they would generate an additional $500,000 of service revenue. So that's a quick checkpoint that you can do right now to gauge what your MSP efficiency is. What I can tell you is everyone that doesn't have high efficiency based on their leverage has more struggles in sales. They tell me they just need more leads, but more leads is not really the issue. It's usually a result of the issue that's much deeper in the way that they look at the business, look at their efficiency, and most importantly, the way that they look at their value. So here's what you need to do. You want to start right now by defining the most efficient plan to get from where you are to where you want to be. So use the math that we gave you in terms of MRR equals first time appointments times average MRR times your close ratio, and think about the formula that you need to build a plan that actually yields the MRR you want and a reasonable number of first time appointments that you could build to. Then what you're going to have, many of you will have to do is work on building your value to match your plan. You may look at it and say, listen, I can't get there at $100 a seat. I need to be at $140 a seat if I'm going to be able to have a formula that I can actually deliver on and create a reasonable number of first time appointments. Then you'll be able to increase not just sales, but profitability. This is the gold rush. There has never been more recurring revenue in my 20 years of owning two MSPs and working with over 1,000 of them. There's never been a time where the availability in every market is to sell more recurring revenue at a higher price today. So this is the time, really, right now is the time to do it. So I'll answer a couple questions, but real quick, I want to tell you why people do business with us here at True Methods. Based on our training and software programs, we help people build a true superpower. Develop sales separation, consistently build recurring revenue, dramatically increase profit margins, and ultimately, what I'm passionate about is helping entrepreneurs achieve financial independence for all the risks that they take and help them help their team members achieve a level of financial security. We do that by, we have a training portal that is over 200 hours of content on every aspect of this business, doing a business plan, doing a sales plan, building a superpower, service delivery, design and metric, packaging and pricing. We have a community with forums and an event called Snizzfest that we just had last week. We had 300 of our members from around the world come and spend 2 days with us. Intronus was there with us as well. And we have tools. There is a tool called My IT Process, which is a framework to build a superpower. We show you what numbers to look at. We give you templates and playbooks. So, really, all of these things. And it's just a monthly subscription. So, you can learn more about it. Or if you want, we'll just give you some free advice. If you send an email to gary.promo@truemethods.com, there's no E in true with the subject line promo. We'll start by just asking you some questions about your sales process and point you in the right direction. And if you want to know more about what we do and our subscription services, our team will be happy to tell you that as well. And also, again, if one of the things that you don't have nailed down is your backup and disaster recovery, and you're not figuring out how to get this thing really bundled in so that you're using the solution that's the right solution for every single customer, talk to the people at Intronus. Great way to start is go to intronus.com/no limits. You can get a quote, talk to some people that are knowledgeable, and they have an awesome offering that they can help you with, and they know a lot about this business. So in terms of what you should do and how you should do it, they can give you a lot of advice as well. So we just have a couple questions that I want to answer before we end. If you have one, you can type it in now. But the first question that I got here was, hey, you covered a lot of information. It's a little overwhelming. Where should I start? So you're going to get the recording to this. You might want to listen to it one more time. That might be a good place to start. Talk to us at True Methods. We'll point you in the right direction. But really, to me, what it is you have to step back from your business and you have to put a business plan that makes sense first, and then a sales plan that supports that. And you have to make sure you use the math that we gave you, that your plan is achievable. If you're generating, 2 or 3 good first time appointments a month, and your plan says to get there, you got to generate, 20 a month. In the short term, that's probably not a good plan. You need to go back to your formula. And maybe you need to spend your time on increasing your value, looking at your packaging pricing, and trying to see whether you can get from a plan to get there that's 20 first time appointments a month, that you can get it down to 5 to 7 so that it looks like something that, with maybe over a couple months and focusing on some of the warm lead things we talked about, is reasonable and you can get there. Because if you set a goal and you haven't thought through the math and you just go after it and you fall short every time, it's demoralizing and you think that it's not possible because you didn't have the right focus on the right leads, you didn't have the right value proposition, and so you didn't prepare yourself for success. So that's the number one thing that I see. One of the things people come to our training program, the first thing we look at is besides their leverage and their efficiency to gauge where they are and show them what that means, we look at their packaging and pricing and get that on the fairway so that they can start to build some sales math that makes sense. So somebody asked to send the slides. I think, Sarah, what you're going to do is you're recording this, right? And you're going to let people go back and watch it again?
That's correct.
Yeah, so everybody will be able to go back and rewatch it. So, all right, so we're almost at the top of the hour here. Unless we have any other questions, I think we're good to go, Sarah.
Great. Well, thank you, Gary, for taking the time to go over some different options and ways to improve reoccurring revenue. It was a great presentation here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right. And I want to thank everyone for joining us and have a great day.